Hello all. I want to make a video to discuss developments in ninjutsu. And I'm using the term ninjutsu. I know people don't like to use that term, and because I want it to be all encompassing. I think there are misunderstandings that have plagued the community of people who are legitimate and who have delved into these techniques, and has caused a lot of hardship. I have a chip on my shoulder, and I'm going to just reveal that right here. I was a student of the late great Richard Wigington, who was a student of the late great Ronald Duncan. And shortly before Ronald Duncan left us, I was actually trying to defend him. I've also been a student in the Bujinkan for many years as well. One of probably a few people who have done all the traditions, but I digress. Anyway, I got myself in trouble trying to defend Duncan because I spoke carelessly. And before he passed, he actually contacted me, and in the spirit of greatness, he was comforting to me and was actually contacting me to give me encouragement and say he understood what I was doing. Since that time, I've sort of had this chip to see this through, make sure that what I was originally intending to do to defend him in this case could be done properly. And you know how you suddenly get that light bulb in your head? I now think I understand what a big problem is in this community of people who were chastised many years for claiming to study ninjutsu, while other people claim to be the real art, yada yada. Okay? And I'm going to make that clear in this video. And I'm going to do this in honor of the greatness that was Duncan and Wigington. Okay? Also, I'm going to do it because I do have a healthy respect for the Gendai arts and the Bujinkan. And I think it serves everybody's purpose if this misconception can be cleared up. At least that's what I see it as, a misconception. Now, to delve into this, we have to look at a fundamental distinction, and that has to do with something per se and the qualities of something, okay? When we refer historically to different martial arts and we refer to them as a style, we refer generally historically to a time period when a particular art was used. In point of fact, there's no documented proof that any ninjutsu system intact existed as a historical, documented, formal system. And everybody seems to understand that at this point. So everybody has different claims on the material. Does it exist? Absolutely. If nothing else, all the quarter use systems had shinobi aspects. Okay? This is a known fact. So let's just be generous here and assume everybody's claim might have some validity about using this information, these techniques, these arts as they came into being. And Hatsumi deserves as much credit as anybody, and all the Gendai people that sprouted out from the Bushinkan, in this respect as well. But here's the problem. When I refer to something like taijutsu, there are two aspects. One is the actual historical style in all its totality, and one is the qualities that make that style particular. Okay? Specifically, taijutsu is an art. It's comprehensive, has a lot of influences for Yura Kumauchi, okay, using armor, and was a style used before formal jujitsu systems evolved, okay? The distinction made in this style historically has to do with Jute Taijutsu, Daken Taijutsu, grappling and hitting, and the main features being how the body is used, usually moving in an unsegmented fashion, okay, and using the body weight as generator for power, okay? I will tell you that, in my personal opinion, Hatsumi doesn't teach anything but taijutsu. He never shows taisabaki, which is angular body movements where you can use one part of the body in a different fashion of movement than the other parts. Okay, segmented. This arm moves this way, this shoulder moves this way, etc. But Tai Sabaki is a part of utilizing any particular approach to combat. So is Ashi Sabaki, which is footwork. However, when we get to the great people who used these techniques and developed them in modern times, like Duncan and Wigington, the reference to these arts is the qualities, okay? There is a certain quality to the use of when you're doing Dakenjutsu that makes it distinct from karate or boxing, okay? When you're using Jute, Taijutsu, grappling, as compared to Judo or Shuijiao, Chinese wrestling, okay? That's the difference in what people are referring to. It's a little more self-evident when we get finally to Koppojutsu, which is attacking the skeletal structure, concussive force, okay? Usually in a linear fashion, okay? As opposed to Gyokuryu, which is circular rotational movement, okay? Using thumb, fingertips, Shitojutsu, okay? Bojutsu, okay? Not Bojutsu, I'm sorry. Boshiken, okay? Now, here's the thing. Let's go back to that distinction. Gyokuryu and Koppo, okay, Kotoryu Koppojutsu specifically, are styles, okay? Just as Gikenryu Koppojutsu is a style of Koppojutsu. These styles are all encompassing. If you study Kotoryu, there's Shitojutsu, there's thumb tip, there's all the same elements, but it's part of Kotoryu Koppojutsu. Likewise for Gyokuryu. Gyokuryu uses rotational circular movements. Doesn't mean that you don't have techniques that are characteristic of Koppojutsu in the art under certain circumstances. And again, people will disagree with me on this, but I it's been my experience what I'm telling you, okay? Especially since the same person developed, the founder of Kotoryu came from Gyokuryu. Okay, that's a whole other thing. I digress. So, nevertheless, there are qualities of Koppojutsu which make it distinct from Dakenjutsu, which make it distinct from karate when you hit, or boxing. These are qualities that can be developed, augmented by people using the techniques. And that is what keeps an art alive, functional, relevant. And that's the difference between how people talk across each other. Okay? When you see the wonderful things that were done in modern ninjutsu techniques, for whatever lack of a better term, you see the development of those aspects, the utilization in contemporary times, under contemporary circumstances. You also have people who retain the specific styles that are referenced. Those people are absolutely necessary as well. And you have in between. You could actually create a continuum. Hatsumi has brought a lot of these Koryu characteristic type of techniques alive. Okay? The other Genbukan have retained various degrees of orthodoxy related to the families in that art. Okay? This is very important. You need both. Now, you'll see other such things. Like, for example, even within these systems, if you look at Gyokoryu and Kotoryu, there's actually a different feeling when you do the arts more with a Chinese type of movement as opposed to a Japanese. Chinese movements tend to be a little more succinct, light, okay? The Japanese movements tend to look a little bit more characteristically low stances, sharper, a little bit less, I would say a little less footwork, a little bit more kind of coming in at a longer range. But it's different than Dakenjutsu, which is also hitting, okay? But has its own, retains its own characteristics and qualities. So these are all things that have to be understood and studied. Things like Kamae even, which people tend to look as being absolute. Only in Kukishimaryu and Gyokoryu do we really have such a pronounced aspect of Kamae. Okay? Does that mean that when we talk about Kamae as not being just a physical posture, but representing intent, almost like a physical mudra? That's how I look at Kamae. A physical mudra, okay? That's wrong or in some way uncharacteristic. It becomes wrong when people talk past each other and don't understand what the other person is talking about and then becomes critical. That's when it becomes wrong. Otherwise, it's an aspect of taking these arts, working with them, developing them, and making them relevant, okay? If you start out with a judo background, somebody else has a shui jiao background, somebody else is studying Shinden Furyu, one of the 9 families, jute, okay, grappling, and you all develop throwing technique, you can all develop those different techniques in different ways. They'll have different characteristics. They'll be different. They'll all be valuable and relevant. They lead you to different places as you explore and you work with the techniques. We need that. As a community, we need that development. We need people to come pressure test these techniques from these different systems, work with them, develop them, put their creativity, their energy, their love into this undertaking. Okay? So, I want to conclude this by saying that's what I meant in trying to defend Ronald Duncan when I set out to defend him initially. His contribution, taking the qualities of these arts, working with them, developing them, making them relevant for so many people, including my teacher, Richard Wigington, who has had the same effect and taught many people, and I was lucky enough to work with, among many other great teachers in the Bujinkan, etc. They all contributed and contribute, and their students contribute to this understanding. But that's really what the difference is. Some groups work with the history more closely, because preserving something in Chote is as important as developing it and letting it evolve. Both give us perspective, and both are needed, and both are necessary. And while everybody nowadays thinks the end all and be all of martial arts is getting into a ring and slugging it out or wrestling it out, many people who really need to use these arts with weapons, etc., who are in dangerous occupations like some of us have been in, using them, will understand how important what I'm telling everybody is. And that's all that matters to me in the end. Us.